I want to begin, however, taking a look at law enforcement, because this is really where the tyranny meets the road, or doesn't. Miami has recorded no homicides in 6 weeks, despite deliberate decline in police enforcement. So what does that tell us? Does that tell us, and this is not the first time we've seen this report, this is coming from Reason Magazine. Free Thought Project has reported about this in many, many different jurisdictions. Do we need as many police as we have in order to protect us, or does the government need the police in order to enforce their policy, to write fines? So the police chief in Miami said, well, I told my officers, I literally told them, I don't care if we don't issue a single ticket summons in the month of April. I don't want you unnecessarily interacting with someone if you don't have to, for your safety and theirs. Wouldn't it be nice if we applied that standard all the time? For your safety and theirs. Don't bother people unless you absolutely have to. But that's not the standard of policing most of the time. They ought to adopt this standard. That's the golden rule right there. Leave people alone unless you absolutely must do something. That has not been the case for the police, unfortunately, and that's why I think, as not despite the fact that there is no police enforcement, as Reason says, I think it's because there's been no police enforcement. The police escalate things into life and death situations unnecessarily many, many times. How many times have we seen reports of somebody who gets into a situation, they don't like the way the guy's car looks or whatever, pull him over, start harassing him, and then things escalate either out of the fear of one side or the other, and it turns into this. As the Greenwich Times points out, actually this is a Washington Post article that they reposted, constitutionalist sheriffs won't enforce coronavirus restrictions. And they explain in the Washington Post article how sheriffs are unlike other elected officials. They're also unlike police chiefs, right? They said unlike police chiefs or commissioners who are generally appointed, sheriffs are law enforcement officials who are elected by the residents of their county. And so they are influenced by the desire to be reelected. Wouldn't it be an interesting idea if we had representation in the people who govern us? It seems like I heard that somewhere 200 years ago or something. People were talking about that kind of stuff, no taxation without representation, no regulation without representation, no oppression and the use of force without representation. Wouldn't that be interesting if we had that kind of a system brought back? What if we did that in America, of all places? If we actually had the people who rule over us, the people who have the ability to use lethal force, what if they had to be elected? We're being ruled right now by a bureaucrat who has been in office for 35 years, Fauci. He's not accountable to anybody. We've got bureaucrats all over Washington, all over state and local government who are not accountable to anybody, and they just are issuing orders about everything. Now you can't go out. Now you can go out, but you got to walk on one side of the road. Now you got to hop on one leg while you wear a mask. What are they going to come up with next week? Well, I'll give you an idea because we can already see what's happening in Wuhan. Just arbitrary, no matter how badly their narrative about a pandemic has collapsed in a heap of lies, they continue to pile on the arbitrary restrictions and mandates and rules. Do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. And they're not elected. Virtually every one of these people putting stuff out like this is not elected. It's the bureaucrats who are driving this. Yeah, they've got people in front of them who are elected, people who empower them who are elected. The president, governors. You got some mayors who are doing this as well. And you have some sheriffs who are doing it, but you also got some sheriffs who are not doing it because sheriffs have to stand for re-election. What a sheriff, and this goes on, Washington Post, what a sheriff promises to do is quite likely to come true because they have much more autonomy than other elected officials. Legislators can't do much. They have to go through a lengthy, involved policy-making effort. They have all this red tape and legalese. And by the way, you know, if you are an idealistic Mr. Smith and you want to go to Washington, you're going to basically be stuck on the outlier area. I mean, the establishment of both parties are going to make sure your bill never even comes to the floor. If you really speak out about freedom and liberty, you'll get the Matt Shea treatment. You'll get kicked out of your own caucus. If you really get serious about it, they'll kick you out of the Republican Party caucus. That's what's going on with Matt Shea in Washington. But, you know, unlike these legislators, the sheriffs don't have these kind of constraints. For example, sheriffs choose whether or not they cooperate with federal immigration authorities. They choose whether or not they're going to enforce gun control laws, and on and on and on. And they choose whether or not they're going to enforce the coronavirus restrictions put out by the unelected public health bureaucrats. So let me tell you something. Everybody focuses on the presidential race. I don't really care this year at this point. When I see what President Trump has done to shut this country down, I really don't care. Yeah, Biden is crazy. He's probably senile, likely. All evidence points to that. And when he comes out and his policy statements are things like smart guns and so forth, I know that he's advocated that in the past. And guess what? Even when the Obama administration was in, they weren't going to get smart guns. But President Trump can get a ban on bump stocks. First president to go in and regulate attachments to a gun, not part of the gun that the BATF has ever even dared to regulate, but he got it done. He puts out the idea of a red flag gun law, and everybody enacts that across the country because the people supporting President Trump stand down. So even though he says, well, I don't support some of these other things that Joe Biden does, he can still move the ball forward much more easily than the Democrats can. Besides, all of this has to be implemented at the local level. And so let me tell you, the people who have more to do with your life than the President of the United States is your local sheriff. Why do you think the John Birch Society for years and years said support your local sheriff? It became something of a joke. They even did a movie with that title, I think. James Garner. I'm just trying to pull from memory. I had to look this up. But yeah, support your local sheriff. You should. That's what I want. How about that? It was James Garner. I couldn't tell you anything else about that movie. Nevertheless, it's real. It's real. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you can cut off unconstitutional orders from the President of the United States, whether that unconstitutional president is Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Cuomo or whoever it is. You can stop them with a sheriff. Or a sheriff can become a real petty tyrant either. So you better pay attention to who the sheriff is. That's who you need to focus on this election. Focus on your local sheriff and other local officials. We got a lot of them that we got to throw out of office here in Texas. Let me tell you, we'll be right back.
I'm always excited about InfoWars Life products. They're amazing, they're cutting edge, you love them, I love them, and they fund the InfoWar in the face of the globalist onslaught. But we have come up with a new product over a year in development that is amazing. The only organic hand sanitizer on the market with organic essential oils on top of it. And there's another innovation. It's the spray cap. It doesn't just pour out a bunch of thick, gross goo, but it's high quality and aerosolizes it in a really great way. I like to put it on my hands, rub a little bit on my face. It's got organic alcohol in it, so don't spray it right in your eyes. But I just love it personally as something that's a moisturizer as well. So this is a real innovation. I don't know why others didn't think of coming out with a hand sanitizer that actually has essential oil in it so it doesn't dry you out, it smells great. It's so refreshing. This is a big winner.